Well, a lot of you know me, so oh, thanks. And that might taste really good. So I've been floating around here for probably. I went to my first national in California, and I haven't stopped since because somebody invited me into a room and said, "Hey, why don't you sit in on this conference?" And I walked out being a chair. So, go to conference committees. That's how go for it. But one of the wonderful things is that AVP has alwa's been my family, and I continue to do the work on many different levels. In New York, I'm the current state president, and what's unique about New York's board is that there are a lot of ex-offenders that sit on the New York State Board for AVP, and we really encourage it. We change venues sometimes so we can bring it a little closer to the city, but if not, we do carpools to get a lot of ex-offenders up, and we work with their parole officers so they can be part of the decision-making process. And one thing we learned is that access to power is a big thing. A lot of people die off in their first 3 months because we don't really reach out very intensively in the first 3 months, and that's usually when people are going to reoffend. So that's why, in New York we have landing strip, and we have an 800 number, so when people are coming home, we do reasonable assurance letters, which basically means after you see a parole board and you're going home, these are the services that AVP can offer you. And we have an auto-signed letter, but it tells people when the landing strip times are, where you can go, and keep this number. The reason we had an 800 number is we couldn't presume to know the condition of the person who we were serving. And there are many people out there who are first released with just $40 in New York that don't have enough money to make a phone call. So the 800 number will allow you to call someone, at least for free. Landing strip, we provide a hot meal. And again, we provide support, which is probably the most important part. We do have people who haven't been incarcerated who attend landing strip, because it's also a conduit for people in the community to know exactly what's going on with AVP. And the American Friends Service Committee has been kind to donate the same room for the last 13 years. So it's at 15 Rutherford Place, and we meet in room number 1. So if anybody's ever in the city, stop by on the first Tuesday and the third Wednesday at 6 p.m. The formula has not changed in 13 years, and we believe in that type of consistency is very important for people, because you may have done your first workshop in AVP in 1990 and never been exposed to AVP again through transfers, or it wasn't in the prison you were at. But if you can always remember, first Tuesday, third Wednesday at 6 p.m., there's always somebody in that room at 15 Rutherford Place who can greet you when you come home.
I've been there, it's great.
I know, right? Sometimes, there's only one person, me, sitting there. But there are other times where there's 17 people. You never know what's going to happen. And that's the magic of landing strip. But with landing strip, when you put 17 people in a room together and they're all needy, guess what they're going to do? They're going to make another program. So they made Flight Path to Freedom, and they challenged the New York State Board because a few people died and they left bequests. And New York was a little confused about how they needed to spend the money, and these men and women gave clarity and focus of purpose. So basically we allocated about $20,000 for a prototype project. We're still going to figure out how we're going to fund it, or if we're going to lay it down at the end of this year, but hopefully we won't have to if we can figure out how to keep the funding going. But basically, we have a private contractor who's an ex-offender who works with a program called Redemption Center, which actually has beds. So we sort of fixed the system in our favor. So when a person who writes the AVP office says, "Listen, I have no place to go, no one, can you help me?" we actually have somebody who's a consultant that we can send that information to. That person contacts that person and makes arrangements with their parole officer so they're paroled directly to that particular program and space. Also, if people are home and they have a place and everything is okay, but they need a job, that consultant also helps them navigate the system to get a job. Also, the consultant works on connecting them to the AVP structure, and that was one of our biggest components, because even though it's not something that we think about, but we want people to attend landing strip on a regular basis. We want people to come to our board. The joke is that when I was exposed to AVP, it was almost in my 20s. In my 40s now, and I'm going gray. Well, the people that taught me AVP are in their 70s. And, you know, we have to really nurture the whole next generation of AVP, or we're going to see our whole organization collapse very quickly. And, you know, I look around and I see a lot of wonderful people, but I see a lot of gray hair too. And, you know, the sad fact is that, yeah, I know, Pat, right? You know, when I started AVP, I had a full head of hair. You know, yeah, you know. And it's a reality that we have to face. And the only way that we can really face that is really challenging each other in our areas to bring people to the power table. And AVP doesn't like that word power. But the bottom line is, if you have a board in your state and ex-offenders don't sit on it, then, you know, they're not having the access to power. And you got to figure out how to get them there. They'll be willing if called. You'd be surprised at what an invitation can do to a person's life. We find that a lot of people are not called. One of my peripheral experiences is, because I have too much to say, but with the Religious Society of Friends. I used to attend Quaker worship for many years, actually even clerk meetings for many years because of March. But the one thing Quakers never did was come up to me and say, Ray, would you like to be a Quaker? Yeah, never. They never invited me to be a member of the Religious Society of Friends. And deep down in my psychology, it always stood there. But the Presbyterian Church, while I was in prison, said, Ray, you want to be a member of our church? Sent me a mail order course, came in and visited me and said, oh, join our church. Please come home. And guess what I did?
Came home.
Well, yeah, I came home. That was good. I joined their church. Now, I've always been an attender at the Friends. I enjoy Friends, but the invitation was a very important part in what happened. So we really have to think about what we do, how we do it. I'm not saying open your doors to let ex-offenders into your house, but try to work on creating wonderful programs where ex-offenders can feel like there's a door open into what's going on in AVP in your particular region. Last thing, you know, which is sort of bittersweet, I was doing a workshop in prison, and a brother recently came up to me and said, well, Ray, how long does it last? And at first I was confused by the question. So he says, well, no, how long do people hold it against you? And I was like, what do you mean? He says, being an ex-offender. And I said, well, that's a tough question to answer. But the interesting thing was that I recently came off a job interview. I went to 3 of them for one person. You know, I thought I had this job nailed. The last interview was the ex-offender interview. You know, and so it lasts, and I told them, for the rest of your life. When I landed in New York, I'm actually going to hop in a car and drive up to Albany for another job interview. And I have a wonderful job, but, you know, this is the leap from the day-to-day stuff to the job I've always dreamed of. And I sent my resume up, and they responded within 2 days. Almost unheard of from Albany's perspective. You know, it says, hey, we really want to meet you. We know you live in Brooklyn, but could you drive up to Albany on this particular day? So on Monday, I'm going to drive up to Albany, right next to DOCS, which is funny because I drive up there to talk to them. But I'm going to drive up to the AIDS Institute, and I'm going to interview for my dream job. But I know in that discussion, what's going to come up is, have you ever been convicted of a crime? Then what? And how do you deal with it? So 9 years out, it still touches my life. And understand that for an ex-offender, it's always going to touch your life. You can't forget about it. It's going to be inbred in who you are. It's really the challenge of how you deal with it on a daily basis. You sort of don't want to forget about it, because if you do, that's when it really bites you in the butt. But if you remember it, and it's actually a place where you can get a lot of great strength, because you know that you have to keep doing the work so people won't perceive you as the ex-con. So when everybody introduced themselves, you know, I don't necessarily like to say I was in prison. I'm just Ray. You know, I mean, you know me as Ray. You know, if you met me in the street, I'm Ray. You know, I'm Ray the nice guy at my job. Everybody loves Ray. For those few that are blessed to know that I've been in prison, it's, oh my God, you were in prison? I can't believe it. You know, and you know, I mean, because I'm just Ray. You know, I've been working AVP principles and Quaker principles for many years, and that's who I am today. So with that, I'm going to pass to Bob, because Bob got on the